Chapter 126, The Barracks, Hanyu's POV. When Hanyu had cried himself out in Kenta's soft, comforting embrace, his friend helped him pick himself up as best he could, then the two of them set off for the barracks. Hanyu had never actually seen the place where most of his friends were living, though he'd tried to imagine it. He'd always assumed that that was where he would be living. However, most of the morality stories and artist renderings centered on personal attendants, since they could be paired with various gods. Hanyu found it hard to envision anything other than the temple dormitories. Hanyu found himself very self-conscious as they navigated the corridors. Every time a god or human passed them, they looked at him with an intense, questioning sort of recognition, even the ones he'd never met, and it made his heart pound and his stomach roll. Did everyone know about his disobedience and the price their lord had paid for it? Were they angry with him on Antony's behalf? Were they wondering why he was allowed to walk around freely after his escapades, or why he was able? His hands shook a little with nerves as they approached the door, which was guarded by a tall, broad god who looked even more familiar as they drew closer. Lord Festus looked up and gasped as they drew near. "It's you!" the god cried, pointing at Hanyu. "Oh no!" Hanyu crashed to his knees, dropping the box and sending pencils rolling everywhere. "I'm so sorry, my lord," he wailed. "The boots got bloody. I didn't mean to, my lord. They're trying to get the stains out, but they don't know." "Who cares?" Lord Festus wailed back. "We never would have left you alone if we'd known Marcus would try something like that. Is Antony angry with us?" That was unexpected. Hanyu's teary eyes cleared, if only due to shock. "No, my lord, I don't think so. He doesn't really have a tongue right now, so I don't really know." Lord Festus groaned. "Oh, he's sure to be pissed. We never should have left you alone. Humans can't fight Marcus." "But, my lord, you didn't know I would need protection." Hanyu didn't want the god to feel guilty, especially not when Hanyu had ruined his nice boots. Would you please put in a good word for us?" Lord Festus asked anxiously, sinking to his knees and beginning to gather the pencils. "We treated you fair, right? Up until we left, which was stupid, and we're very sorry." Hanyu felt off balance and oddly tilted, and he was fairly sure it wasn't because of the ship's motions. It was very strange to have a god pleading with him. Strange and unpleasant. It was like the times when Asao had deferred to him as first slave, only worse. This seemed like the final proof that Hanyu did not enjoy the feelings of authority in the least. "You and Lord Gala were so kind, my lord," he tried to reassure the unhappy god. "I'm sure my master won't be upset." "But if he is, you'll say we were decent to you, won't you?" Lord Festus urged. "Everyone says, well, your word counts for a lot with him, right? And we didn't touch you or anything." "Not even once." Hanyu was less sure that his opinion carried any weight with the lord of the ship than his new friend seemed to be, but he could honestly attest that Lord Festus and Lord Gala had been the very souls of propriety. "And I'll tell my master so, if you like, my lord." Lord Festus heaved a relieved-sounding sigh. "Thanks for that, and sorry about your pencils." Kenta spoke up for the first time, kneeling demurely at Hanyu's side. "If it pleases you, my lord, Lord Antony sent us to deliver these to one of the men in the barracks." "Oh, of course." Lord Festus scrambled to his feet and opened the door, ushering them through with a wave. "Thanks again." As it turned out, Hanyu's thoughts about the temple dormitories hadn't been especially far off. He and Kenta stepped into a big room, the biggest he'd seen on the ship, large enough to fit the kitchens twice over. Hammocks lined two walls, and a third wall was empty except for torches and a row of chests strapped firmly to its solid timber. Hanyu supposed that these chests were intended to hold each offering's clothes and belongings, and he noticed with a pang of guilt that they were significantly smaller than his own. Apparently, the temple had not laden the others with so much finery and jewelry. The wide center of the room was full of chairs and sofas, over which his cadre were currently scattered. They all looked up when the door opened, discarding whatever books or pastimes they had been occupied with and shooting to their feet. Eyes widened when they saw Hanyu and Kenta walking in. Taiki's hand flew up to cover his mouth, barely restraining a gasp. Morio's jaw sagged open, and Jen whispered something to Daiji, but nobody moved towards them or spoke aloud until the door shut behind them. Only once it was clear that no gods would be following them in did Hanyu's cadre mates rush forward to engulf them. Hanyu! Hanyu, you're all right! Thank the gods! We kept hearing different stories. It was awful! Jen, naturally, was the one to cut through the general hubbub with his characteristic bluntness. I heard you were dead! Morio gave him a withering look. That's dumb. No one said that. Well, they said he lost his eye, and it's basically the same thing. Jen peered anxiously at Hanyu. You don't look hurt at all. I'm not. Somehow, Hanyu had been drawn into the room, and he found Taiki pressing him down onto a soft sofa. Really, I'm fine. All the gods are talking to each other, and half the time it's in other languages, so we have no idea what's been happening, Daiji said, shifting his weight anxiously from foot to foot and wringing his hands. But something's going on. They keep mentioning Lord Marcus and Lord Antony. So you must know all about it, Jen cut in. Come on, tell us. Hanyu hardly knew where to begin. Don't push him, Taiki scolded. He doesn't have to say anything. Hanyu. Kenta's hand was on his shoulder, just where Lord Theodora had rested hers before. His hand was as small and soft as hers was large and calloused, but somehow Hanyu drew just as much strength from his reassurance. I could explain things if you want. Hanyu could only nod, consumed by mute gratitude. All the years he dreamed of being center of his cadre's attention, and now he couldn't even manage to speak. It figured. Kenta's recounting was brief, but it would have been quite thorough except that he painted Hanyu in an unconscionably favorable light. There was no mention of disobedience or sneaking away. Instead, Kenta said, or had he only implied, Hanyu's head was in a muddle, that Hanyu had been on the island on a legitimate errand for his master. Accordingly, everyone regarded him with the purest sympathy, all their gasps of shock and outrage reserved for Marcus. I can't believe it! Daiji shook his head. In the stories, he was always so reasonable. Lord Antony and Lord Marcus fighting, Morio mused, his eyes round and far away. It just doesn't seem real. Jen flopped down at Hanyu's feet, pressing against his knees. I'm just glad you still have your eyes. The pose reminded Hanyu of the way he used to sit when Antony fixed his hair, and the words reminded him that he should be the one missing an eye, and he promptly burst into tears. Half a dozen men started scolding Jen at once. The tumble of voices only ceased when Kenta raised his own voice, calm but clear, and reclaimed everyone's attention. He's changed, Hanyu realized. He never used to be authoritative like this. He's gotten stronger and more confident, and I just keep making the same stupid mistakes I've made my whole stupid life, but with bigger consequences. It was Asao who lost his eye, Kenta told their cadre. He kept speaking over the gasps, moans, and horrified whispers that followed. But Lord Julia expects him to make a full recovery. But with an eye missing, Taiki's shocked voice trailed away delicately. His beauty will be spoiled, Jen burst out, less delicately. What's going to happen to him? At this, Kenta fell silent and darted an appealing look at Hanyu. Right. It was time for him to talk about the results of his own horrible choices. I really think Lord Antony will keep him. His voice sounded thin and miserable, but certain even to his own ears. Our Lord has been so good to both of us. I just can't imagine him throwing Asao out. The others looked dubious, and Hanyu couldn't really blame them. An attendant was supposed to be pretty and alluring, a lovely decoration for his master's chambers. Why shouldn't they think that Antony would discard his maimed offering like he would a broken dish or a torn sheet? They hadn't seen how hard Antony tried with Asao. They hadn't watched him sleep on the couch for a week or clear space in his closet. They hadn't heard the desperate edge in his voice as he tried to make conversation, and nothing Hanyu could say would make them understand. Instead, he tried another tack to reassure their worried cadre. "And Lord Thaddeus has offered to take him, so he'll have a place no matter what." Pandemonium! Concerned faces turned horror-struck, and voices raised in protest. Even Kenta looked a little unsure. "Oh, no!" cried Taiki, actually clutching at his chest. "Not Lord Thaddeus!" So much for Hanyu's reassurance. "It's all right. He's really not like he is in the stories." "Of course he doesn't do anything to you," Jen scoffed. "You're his lord's treasured favorite." "I'm not." Why did everyone keep talking like that? It only intensified the anguish of knowing how deep in disgrace Hanyu had fallen. "And even... that's not it. He's really very sweet. He's the one who stopped Marcus from kicking Asao, and he didn't hurt his old attendant even after he was unfaithful. And he made us jewelry and showed us fish in his room, and he stayed with Asao this whole..." "You were in his room?" Daiji gasped, pale and horrified. "Lord Thaddeus's room? And you lived?" "I've been there lots." It felt good to defend the gentle god who'd done so much for Asao. "And like I said, he's nice. It wasn't dangerous at all." "But what about the bones?" Morio demanded. "There's only fish bones," Hanyu assured them. "He really loves fish." No one looked terribly convinced. Hanyu's eyes caught on Taiki's feeding wounds, and a thought occurred to him. "Doesn't he drink here? You've all met him." Jen snorted. "The gods on guard don't allow any roughness in here. Lord Quintus gave Yuma the tiniest little bruise the other day when Lord Iovita was standing guard. They scolded him until I thought he'd start crying." "Jen," Taiki hissed, "that's disrespectful." "I just hope your Lord Antony keeps Asao, that's all I'm saying," Jen concluded, ignoring the admonishment. "My master won't send Asao away unless he wants to go." That was the one thing Hanyu felt entirely sure of. Asao hadn't done anything wrong. Surely Antony didn't blame him for stabbing a god, not when he'd fought that same god just minutes later, and he would never banish Asao for being ugly. That would be... well, Hanyu knew the correct answer was that would be Antony's right. A god could choose what to do with his own things, of course, but some deep, rebellious part of Hanyu's mind couldn't help feeling that it would be cruel to discard Asao after everything he'd suffered. Antony, who didn't even want to banish Hanyu for his very real and serious sins, would never be so cruel. Banishing me wouldn't be cruel, though. It would be only fair, and long, long overdue. A slave who isn't beautiful is still far more useful than a slave who won't obey. Speaking of which... Jen, these are for you. Hanyu extended the box. They're a present from Lord Antony. For once, Jen didn't have a quip or blunt question. His eyes bulged and his face paled. He gestured to his chest and silently mouthed, "Me?" "Yes." Hanyu kept holding out the box. "For you." "Take it," Morio urged, and Jen did, moving with the slow deliberation of a person in a dream. "But..." Finally, Jen had found his tongue. "But I don't... Lord Antony doesn't know I'm alive!" If possible, his eyes widened even more when he opened the box and saw all the paper and pencils. He looked from the box to Hanyu, then back again. "I said you liked to draw, and he remembered." Hanyu glanced around. "He's asked about all of you and listened to everything I said. Lord Antony is the most wonderful, caring god, and he'll look after Asao. You'll see." Later, when they were walking back, Kenta nudged his shoulder. "It didn't seem like the right time earlier," he murmured, eyes bright as he grinned up at Hanyu. "But don't you think it was awfully romantic to have Lord Antony come to your rescue like that, fighting off a kidnapper like a hero from a song?" Hanyu's shoulders curled in, and he hunched as he walked. "In the songs, the heroes get to keep their tongues." Kenta just squeezed his hand and fell silent for the rest of the walk. Lord Theo was still in Antony's rooms when Hanyu returned. She looked sad and strangely wistful, but she tried to smile in greeting. As for Antony himself, he was asleep in his usual tight curl, and when Theo spoke it was in a whisper. "I'll tell Julia he's sleeping. She won't interrupt until she absolutely has to. She always says that sleep does more to heal than all her remedies put together." Hanyu bowed his head. "Yes, my lord. I'll be ready to let her in when she comes." "Hanyu," Lord Theo squirmed a little in her seat. "I'm awfully sorry about that book. I didn't mean to pick something so bloody." Truthfully, Hanyu had nearly forgotten about the book. Now, however, the memory of his abject failure to do the one simple thing his lord had asked of him came rushing back, and he had to stifle a moan. "There's nothing to apologize for, my lord," he whispered. "It was my fault. I should be prepared to read anything my master likes." "I'm still sorry." Theo got up and headed for the door, then hesitated. "Hanyu, can I ask you something?" Oh no, he was in trouble for so many things. It was hard to know what he should be dreading most. "Yes, my lord?" "Are you angry with Antony for kissing you?" Well, he certainly hadn't expected that. How could he answer her? He had no idea what the kiss had even meant. Punishment, taunt, or momentary weakness, it remained maddeningly opaque. At least this proved that Antony remembered the kiss. Hanyu had half hoped that he wouldn't. But why would the god have told Lord Theodora about it? Hanyu pictured his master, face crumpled, signing with labored, unhappy movements that he had been so sore and miserable that he'd actually kissed his horrible, disobedient, worthless slave. What a mistake! What an unpleasant memory! The besotted thing probably thinks he's my concubine now. He's so stupid I'll have to beat him off with a stick before he'll get the message. Hanyu could picture it all, clear as day. Still, he knew one thing. "I'm not angry with him, my lord." How could he be? Antony had saved them. As Kenta had pointed out, he'd been like a storybook prince, swooping in at just the right moment to perform the daring rescue. Hanyu wasn't allowed to feel anything towards him but gratitude. Lord Theo was nodding. "You might want to let him know that when he wakes. He'll be sad and probably cranky. This hasn't been his week. I guess it hasn't been yours either, has it? Sorry, Hanyu. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you. I'll be back as soon as I can. For now, though, I think it's past time I got us away from this fucking island."